everyone, and welcome to Lipstick on a Rig. Today we're going to be making this very simple Santa hat wine bottle topper. And this is an excellent project for beginners, and you can also trade out your red yarn for green to make an elf hat. And this is part of my four-skein Christmas challenge where I see how many unique projects I can make using only 4 skeins of yarn. So if you're interested in my other projects in this series, then please check the links in the description. And for this project, we're going to be working with size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn. And I'm working with the Big Twist Value brand, and my colors are cream and Varsity Red. And I'm also going to be using a size F or 5 or 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. But if you don't have a crochet hook of this exact size, that's fine, just get as close as you can. And we're going to begin with a magic circle, so we're going to drape our tail over our working yarn and pinch that intersection. Then we're going to insert our crochet hook from the bottom up. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through our loop. And so we're going to begin by placing 7 double crochets inside our magic circle. And if you've never worked with a magic circle before, just make sure you're placing your stitches in the loop as well as over the tail. And once you have your 7 double crochets in place, you're going to pull on your tail to tighten the gap in your magic circle. And we're going to skip our first double crochet stitch right here, and we're going to slip stitch into our second double crochet. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this inside out. And for row 2, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to place 1 double crochet in each of our 6 stitches in our row. So that does include this first current stitch where we placed our slip stitch and our chain 2. So go ahead and place 1 double crochet in each stitch in your row. And when you get to the end of your row, we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into our first double crochet. And for row 3, we're going to begin by chaining 2, and then we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first stitch and 2 double crochets in our second stitch. And for every new row for our entire project, the first stitch is always going to be where we placed our chain 2 and our slip stitch. And that's going to be our pattern for the entire row, alternating between placing 1 and 2 double crochet stitches. And when we get to the end of our row, we should have a total of 9 double crochet stitches. And at the end of our row, we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And for row 4, we're going to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in each stitch in our row. So we should have a total of 9 double crochet stitches when we're done. And at the end of our row, we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2 and slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And we're going to chain 2 again for the beginning of row 5. And the pattern for this row is going to be to place 1 double crochet in our first 2 stitches and then 2 double crochets in our third stitch. We're just going to repeat that going all the way around our row, and when we get done, we should have a total of 12 double crochet stitches. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 2, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first double crochet. And for row 6, we're going to chain 2 and we're going to place 1 double crochet in each stitch in our row. So we should have a total of 12 double crochets when we get to the end of our row. And at the end of the row, we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2 and slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And for row 7, we're going to chain 2 and then we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first 3 stitches, and then we're going to place 2 double crochets in our 4th stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern going all the way around our row, and when we get done we should have a total of 15 double crochets. And we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And for row 8, we're going to chain 2 again and place 1 double crochet in each stitch in our row. So we should have a total of 15 double crochets when we're done. And we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And for row 9, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to place 1 double crochet in our first 4 stitches, and then we're going to place 2 double crochets in our 5th. And we're going to repeat that going all the way around our row, and when we get done we should have a total of 18 double crochets. And at the end of our row we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. And for row 10 we're going to chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in each stitch in our row. So we should have a total of 18 double crochets when we're done. And we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into our first double crochet stitch. And next we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. And now we're going to attach the cream yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. So to do that, hold your tail and twist your working yarn over it like this. Then insert your index finger and thumb into that hole and pull up your working yarn. Then pull on your working yarn and your tail to tighten up that little hole. And so I'm going to insert my crochet hook right here in this very last double crochet stitch, but you don't have to, you can really insert it anywhere in your row. And I'm going to yarn over and pull up through my stitch, and then yarn over and drop those 2 loops. And I know that this is my slip stitch, so I'm going to skip it, and I'm going to insert my crochet hook in this very first stitch from my previous row, and I'm going to work over my red tail while I do that. So to work over your tail, drape it over your crochet hook next to your stitch, and yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and drop 2 loops for another single crochet. And we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row, and I'm going to crochet over my tail while I work this. So when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 18 single crochets. And when you get back to this first single crochet where we inserted our crochet hook, you're going to place a slip stitch inside of it. And for our next row with our cream color, we're going to chain 1 and place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. And that does include this first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. And now I'm going to crochet over my cream tail. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet. And from here, we're just going to repeat that last row. And after you have repeated that last row, then you're just going to cut and tie off your yarn. And now we're just going to hide our tail up the inside of our little beanie here. So I like to slip stitch into my next stitch before I do this, and then just weave my tail up the inside. And don't forget to save your tails, no matter how small. They make excellent stuffing in other projects. And so now we're done with our little beanie portion, and we need to make our tiny little pom-pom for the top. So in the meantime, before we attach the pom-pom, I recommend folding this and placing a heavy book or something on top of this to make that fold stick. Or you can sort of crochet through this so that it's forced to stay down. And you're going to want to grab a scrap piece of yarn or a stitch marker for your next part. So we're going to begin with another magic circle, and we're going to place 6 single crochets inside of it. And as you can tell, I am working with my cream yarn, but you can work with any color that you want your pom-pom to be. And once you have your 6 single crochets inside your magic circle, then tighten up that gap by pulling on your tail. And next we're going to begin a continuous loop pattern. So we're not going to start and stop our individual rows, but instead it's going to act like a spiral. So we're going to begin by placing 2 single crochets in our first single crochet stitch from the previous row. And after you place your 2 stitches, it should be easy to slide your stitch marker in that first stitch. And next we're just going to place 2 single crochets in each stitch in our row until we get to our stitch marker. So you should have a total of 12 single crochets when you're done. Now we're just going to remove our stitch marker. And for our next row, we're just going to single crochet together 2 stitches at a time. So to do that, insert your crochet hook up underneath the first stitch and yarn over and pull through. Then up underneath the second stitch and yarn over and pull through. Then yarn over and drop the 3 loops on your crochet hook. And we're just going to repeat that around the row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 6 single crochets. And of course, you can place the stitch marker in your first stitch if you want to. And so now we're going to turn this little ball inside out. And I have found that the tail makes excellent stuffing. So we're going to cut our strand of yarn pretty long. So next we're going to tie off our yarn, and then we are going to weave this tail through our 6 stitches. So you're going to pull it through like this and then pull it back through the other way in your next stitch. And once you make it back to your original stitch, then you're just going to pull on your tail. And that should sort of cinch your hole up nice and tight. And we're just going to secure this by inserting our crochet hook in any of the available loops there. We're going to stick our finger right there to sort of hold our tail in place, and then we're going to pull it through. And that creates a loop with your tail, and you're just going to draw the tail through the loop and pull it nice and tight. And now you're done creating your small little pom-pom, and we can attach it to our Santa hat. And to do that, insert your crochet hook up in your Santa hat, and then just pull this tail through your hat. And now we're going to turn it inside out. And once it is turned all the way inside out, then you're just going to tie your two tails together. And I like to tie it a couple of times to secure it, and you're going to want to make sure that this is nice and snug. And you can trim your two tails if you would like, but otherwise we're just going to turn this inside out again. And now we're going to place our heavy object back on the Santa hat. Just make sure it doesn't include your little pom-pom here, because we don't want that to be flat. And once you're done, it should look something like this. Please let me know in the comments below if you experienced any issues while you were making this, and I will do my best to help you out. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, Lipstick on a Rig. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.